Hello, dear fellow modern energies, artists and modern energists. As you know, I have received the instruction from my energy mind to make gnomes in bottles. Well, that's actually my own idea. That's a gnome in a drop. This is a gnome in a bottle. That was my original instruction from my dear energy mind. And I am wearing here the one that is the that's my response. This is my outcome, really. This is the one that needed to be created. And I am left with an absolute WTF, or what the fuck. Why should I be making gnomes in bottles? And the thing is that modern energy art doesn't just embrace one modality. It's not just sculpting or painting or modeling or dancing, singing, making music. It's the whole 9 yards, or the whole 11 yards, or possibly the whole 19 yards of art. And that's all available to a modern energy artist. And what I think has happened here is that I've made the sculpture, and now it's time to switch modalities. And a story needs to be told about these gnomes to get further with it and find out what it's all about and what it was all about in the first place. So we're therefore switching to storytelling, which is a modern energy art modality. And I'm just going to go with it and see what finds out. And this morning I decided to write the story of the gnomes and wrote it into a Facebook box. I got about a third of the way through it, and then the internet crashed and it disappeared. So I'm not going to give up, so I'm going to do a video instead and just tell the story. Right, as we got this far. So once upon a time, in a land not that far away from here, there lived a weird man, and he liked to catch gnomes and put them into bottles. And that was his hobby. But a lot of people got very excited about this because they knew that gnomes were exceptionally lucky. And a gnome in a bottle you can wear around your neck is a fantastic luck charm. So loads of people wanted these, and they bought them from him. So he gave up his day job and spent all his time chasing gnomes and making bottles. And this was all going very well, until one day a little girl in the town where the weird man lived received a gnome in a bottle for a birthday gift from her auntie Wibbly. And she hated it. She absolutely hated it. And she had to be really stomped at from her mother under the kitchen table to even get "thank you, Auntie Wibbly" out through clenched teeth. And as soon as she could, she just ran away from the birthday celebrations and ran into the forest and sat under a tree and got the bottle out and held it up and said to the gnome inside, "Oh, you poor thing, this is so awful. How could anybody do such a horrible, horrible thing?" And she was crying and weeping, and tears were running from her eyes. And she was just like, "I'm going to set you free, so you can run amongst the flowers once more, as you should, you poor, poor thing." And inside the bottle, the gnome was sort of looking at her, and it was waving its hands about, its little tiny green hands, and it was shouting, but she couldn't hear what it was saying. And she took this to mean that the gnome was delighted that he was finally going to be set free again. And so she then went ahead and tried to get it out of the bottle. But there was some kind of magic to the bottle. She couldn't get the top off. It seemed to be all made from one piece. And then she tried to smash it with a rock, and that didn't work at all. And she thought that she's going to smash it harder to set the gnome free, when all of a sudden she heard lots of tiny voices around her going, "Stop, stop, what are you doing? Stop, for the love of God." Then she looked around, and on the forest floor by her feet, in the moss that was coming right up to their chests, there was a whole herd of gnomes. Loads, hundreds of gnomes, and they were all screaming together. And that was just as well, because that was the only way she could actually hear them over all the crying and shouting and the smashing of the bottle on the stone. And so she stopped and looked at them and said, "Oh, you poor things, here you are. I want to set you free, your little friend that has been brutally trapped in this horrid bottle. Just give me another few moments and I'll find a bigger stone and I'll smash the bottle and I'll set him free." And all the gnomes were like, "No, no, stop it, stop it. He wants to be in the bottle." And she was like, "What? What are you saying? He doesn't have to be in the bottle," shouted one really loudly, who'd clambered up onto a small rock so that he could be better heard. "He could get out of the bottle any time he wanted to. Gnomes are magic, don't you know?" So she looked at the bottle and at the gnome inside, and he was like, she's like, "You could get out of the bottle any time you want?" "Yes. Yes, of course." And so she put her ear down closer to the ground so she could hear what the gnome was shouting. He had a nice big purple hat and orange face and orange hands and pink shoes with little snail curls at the end. And he seemed to have little golden bells as well on his waistcoat, so he's probably a special gnome. Anyway, so she put her ear to the ground so she'd hear him better and said, "What do you mean he could get out any time he wants?" And the guy says, "Yeah, of course he could get out any time he wants. Don't you know that humans can't catch gnomes unless they really want to be caught?" And she's like, "What? Why? Why would you want to allow yourself to be trapped in such a horrible way?" And the guy gnome said, "But it's not being trapped, it's being carried safely in the world of human beings, and being able to observe and to do some gnome magic in places where we would normally never go. It's an extraordinary experience. We count ourselves lucky if we get caught and put in a bottle." She said, "Okay, I don't believe you. I don't believe that he can just get out any time he wants. Prove it to me." So she put her pendant in the grass and said, "Okay, show me that he can get out." And the other gnomes, they sort of came around that pendant, and there seems to have been a communication in gnome language, which is very fast and super high-pitched, and you can just about sense that it's taking place, but you can't really hear the words. But anyway, so that went back and forth for a while, and then all of a sudden, pop! Out of the bottle pops the gnome, stands on top of the bottle and waves at the little girl and says, "You gave me a right headache banging me on the stone like that. That was awful." She's like, "Oh, sorry. And you can really get out of the bottle?" "Yes, anytime we want. You know, we are not trapped in material objects. What do you take us for? We're magic gnomes. We make magic. Magic is our middle name." And she was like, "Oh, wow. You want to be in the bottle?" "Yes. And you don't mind that I own this bottle because I'm not a special person or an important person. My life's really boring. I just sort of work at home and I go to school and then I do some more work and eat and then I go back to sleep. It's really boring." "Not to us it isn't," said the gnomes all at once and all at the same time, and that was really quite loud and created sort of a ripple in the forest. Even the leaves shivered a little bit as they said. "We think your lives are really interesting," said the top gnome, the one with the purple hat. And the little one that was popped out of the bottle, standing on top, he was nodding his head as well, and there was a little bell at the end of his hat that actually tinkled really nicely. "So, yeah, you find our lives interesting?" said the little girl. She couldn't believe it. I said, "Yeah, it's really interesting how people go through the day and completely avoid all the magic that the day has to offer. We find that really interesting. You fall and stumble over all sorts of magical things all day long, and you don't see it. We love that. We think it's really curious about you." "Wow," said the little girl. She didn't really know what to say to that because she was only about 7 years old or thereabouts. But she did say, "Do you really bring luck? Everybody says that a gnome in a bottle is the greatest luck charm you could possibly have. And the gnomes giggled a little bit and communicated in their little whispers. And then the top gnome said, "You could say we bring luck. What we do is we show people some of the magic and the opportunities that exist around them that they never see." And the girl said, "Do you mean that there is magic all around and we just can't see it?" "That's right," said the gnomes. "That's exactly right. You stumble through your lives in your big hulking bodies, and smash into objects and things, and you are just not seeing all the wonder and the wonderment that is there." And the little gnome who stood on top of the bottle added to this, "And when one of us is around, somehow that brings in a little bit of extra magic, and sometimes you can see the magic that is really there. And I guess that makes you luckier." "Wow," said the little girl, who was now really, really impressed. "I am so sorry I banged you against a rock," she said to the gnome that she had been given as a birthday present. The gnome said, "That's okay. You do crazy things. It's quite exciting, actually. I haven't had such a headache in 1,000 years. The other gnomes all laughing away there. "Yeah, we want to be caught too. We want to have weird experiences too," they all saying. "Okay, so you don't mind being with me then, and going back in the bottle and being my good luck charm?" And the little gnome said, "I'd love it. I'd absolutely love it. But you promise me not to bang me around quite so much anymore. I've had the experience once. I think it's enough for now." Oh, I'm so sorry. Absolutely. I'll promise with my hand on my heart, I will not bang you around, and I will talk to you, and I will listen to you too, and I will love you and be glad to have you in my life." "Yay," said the little gnome, and made a diving movement and dived straight back into the bottle, did a little circular flip, and then stood back up, "Hello," and waved at the little girl. The little girl was beaming. She picked up her pendant, held it to her heart, and said out loud, "I'm so sorry, Auntie Wibbly, that I was so nasty about your fabulous present, but I really thought it was cruel and evil to trap gnomes. But now that I've learned that you can't trap gnomes at all, that's brilliant, and I'm really thrilled that I've got my own little gnome now, and for as long as he wants to stay with me." "That's right," said the top gnome in his purple hat. "That's exactly correct. Because one day the gnomes will have learned all they wanted to learn from a certain person, and they'll either find themselves a new person, or they'll simply pop out of the bottle and go on their merry way." And so it was that the little girl said thank you very much to all the gnomes, and went home happily, and went to see her Auntie Wibbly in her little cottage at the end of the little town, and thanked her particularly for this beautiful birthday gift, and told her the story about the gnomes. And Auntie Wibbly was laughing, and she was well happy, and she had a gnome bottle of her own, and whilst they were drinking milk and eating biscuits, they laid them side by side so the two gnomes could chat to each other about all the experiences they had had. And yeah, so it went on, and I don't really know what happened to the weird man who started this craze, or to the town, but there are still places where gnomes in bottles can be found. And when you do, you're a really lucky person, because they bring that ability to see the magic that is actually all around us. And that's the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly am happy to hear it and tell it. And I now got a story and a message from my dear energy mind that I can now contemplate. Magic doesn't have to be so hard. Magic doesn't have to be so, I don't know. There's certainly learnings to be had from this. And I look forward to how this unfolds further, what happens next. And I shall just keep following the white rabbit all the way to the light. Or the little gnome in this case. Thanks for listening. Lots of love. from me and my gnome. Bye.